If someone had told me that a stranger would walk into my home and completely reshape the course of my life, I wouldn't have believed them. Not me. Not Graham Wexler, CEO of Wexler Dynamics. A man who had built everything from scratch and controlled every corner of his empire down to the last decimal point. But life has a twisted sense of humor. And sometimes, it takes a quiet storm to unravel the illusion of control. I wasn't always this hard. Once, I had a wife, a softer voice, laughter in my home. But the day Vanessa died during childbirth, something inside me died with her. I remember holding Claire for the first time. She was so small, so fragile, her tiny fists clenched, her face red from crying. She looked at me with eyes that didn't understand loss yet, and I realized I had no idea how to raise her. No clue how to fill the void Vanessa left behind. The truth? I didn't grieve properly. I threw myself into work, into rebuilding the company, into distracting myself with expansion strategies and quarterly projections. Anything to drown out the echoing silence of the nursery. Claire cried often, refused bottles, rejected nearly every nanny who walked through our door. I tried to be there, I really did, but I was drowning. Drowning in guilt, in responsibility, in loneliness I didn't dare speak aloud. That's when she arrived. Her name was Marina. She showed up for the interview one rainy Tuesday afternoon. Most applicants arrived overdressed, full of forced cheer. Marina walked in with calm eyes, a neatly bound folder, and a quiet presence that felt honest. She didn't try to charm me. She didn't play to the room. She looked me in the eye and simply said, "I know loss. I know chaos. And I know how to help a child feel safe again." There was something in her voice, not pity, not ambition, but lived experience. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I just felt it. I hired her that evening, and something shifted. Slowly, gently, almost imperceptibly. The first time Claire laughed in weeks, Marina was the one making silly faces beside her high chair. The first night, Claire slept soundly without waking up screaming. Marina had sung to her, a lullaby I didn't recognize, soft and ancient, in a language I couldn't place. The apartment began to feel alive again. Books were left on coffee tables. Toys stayed scattered across the playroom carpet. Claire giggled more, ate more, hugged more. And I started staying home longer, waking up earlier, listening to their routines. The way Marina explained the weather to Claire like it was a fairy tale, or how she traced constellations on the ceiling at night using her phone's flashlight and a quiet imagination. But as strange as it sounds, the more peace I saw in our home, the more unsettled I became. Because peace felt foreign, and I was scared to trust it. Maybe it was that fear. Or maybe it was the paranoid habits I'd built as a businessman. The need to double-check, to verify, to know the truth beneath the surface. Whatever the reason, I had cameras installed in the main areas of the apartment. Not to spy, just to be sure. I convinced myself it was about Claire's safety, about oversight, about trust, but with boundaries. The cameras were small, discreet. One in the kitchen, one in the hallway, one in the playroom. I barely checked the footage at first. Until one night, after a long meeting and a lonely dinner, I pulled it up on my phone, just to scroll through the day. And what I saw on that screen, it wasn't what I feared, but it still broke me. I wasn't even supposed to be home that night. Dinner with the CFO had run long, and I'd lost my appetite halfway through the second course. The conversation felt meaningless, quarterly growth, investor expectations, the usual chess game. But while everyone else sipped wine and clinked glasses, my mind kept drifting back to my apartment, to Claire, to Marina, and to the footage I hadn't reviewed in weeks. So I left early, poured a glass of scotch I barely touched, and sat on the couch in the dim light of my penthouse, surrounded by silence and glass walls that looked over the sleeping city. Just me and the tablet. I opened the surveillance app like I was flipping open a diary I wasn't sure I wanted to read. The feed rolled. 7:14 p.m. Claire in the bathtub, Marina kneeling beside her, bubbles up to their elbows. Both of them were laughing, Marina pretending the sponge was a microphone. 7:52 p.m. Pajamas, bedtime stories. Marina was reading Goodnight Moon, but replacing words with silly rhymes that made Claire giggle herself into hiccups. 8:25 p.m. Lights out. Claire asleep. Marina stepped out of the nursery, exhaled slowly, and wandered into the playroom. It was what came next that made my throat close. She sat down on the floor beside the toy chest, picked up one of Claire's stuffed animals, a little gray elephant, and clutched it to her chest. And then she began to cry. Not soft tears. Not the kind of sniffle you wipe away quickly. This was silent devastation. Her shoulders shook. Her hands trembled. Her whole body curled in on itself like she was trying to hold in the entire weight of her grief. No one was around. No child in danger. No audience. It was raw, unfiltered, private. And I was watching it like some trespasser peering through a window I had no right to install. I paused the footage. And I sat there, stunned. What was I doing? I hadn't caught some betrayal. I hadn't exposed some secret wrongdoing. I had witnessed a woman's pain so deep, so pure, it felt sacred. And I felt ashamed. Ashamed for thinking surveillance would make me feel safer. Ashamed for doubting her. Ashamed that I hadn't seen her earlier, really seen her. Because now it was undeniable. Marina wasn't just a nanny. She was grieving something. Someone. But who? The next morning, I couldn't look at her the same way. She came in with her usual calm warmth, tote bag over her shoulder, coffee in one hand, Claire leaping into her arms like she was the sun come up. She laughed. She smiled. She asked about Claire's cough from last week and reminded me about a pediatrician appointment. But behind all that, I saw it. The weight. The shadow under her eyes. The tiredness hidden by routine. I watched her make pancakes with Claire while humming that same lullaby I still hadn't identified. It was beautiful and heartbreakingly sad. That night, after Claire had gone to sleep and the house was quiet, I finally said it. Marina, can I ask you something personal? She looked up, surprised. Of course, she said. Is something wrong? No, I said. But I saw something last night. On the camera footage. She froze. Just like that. Still as glass. I didn't do anything wrong, she whispered. I would never. I know, I interrupted gently. That's not why I brought it up. Her lips parted, confused. I sat across from her, folded my hands, and said the words as gently as I could. You looked like someone who was holding in a storm. And I saw it break. That's when the silence turned into sobs. She told me everything. 2 years ago, she had a daughter, Amelie, 3 years old, curious, bright, always dancing, always asking questions about the moon. One morning, they were walking to the corner store when a drunk driver sped through a red light. Marina was holding Amelie's hand. She never let go. But it didn't matter. She lost her. And with her, she lost everything. I thought I'd never smile again, Marina said, her voice trembling. And then Claire came into my life. I didn't expect to feel anything. But every time she laughs, every time she hugs me without being asked, I feel like I've been given a second chance to love again. She looked up at me, red-eyed. But sometimes, when she's asleep, and the house is quiet, it all comes back. The pain, the guilt, the what-ifs. I didn't mean for you to see that. I didn't want to scare you. I shook my head. You didn't scare me, Marina. You humbled me. And in that moment, something shifted between us. Not romance. Not yet. But understanding. The kind that's born from shared wounds. And a new truth emerged in my heart. I had hired a nanny, but what I'd found was someone who had already become family. After that night, nothing looked the same. I still woke up at 6. I still reviewed market reports and sipped my black coffee from the same hand-thrown ceramic mug. But everything felt different. The house no longer echoed with the silence of survival. It breathed with warmth, quiet moments, little rituals, soft glances. Marina would hum while tying Claire's shoes. Claire would run to her instead of me when she scraped her knee, and for the first time, I didn't feel threatened by that. I felt relieved. Relieved that someone besides me could carry some of the emotional weight. One evening, after Claire had fallen asleep on Marina's lap during a movie, I offered her a glass of wine. She hesitated. Is this professional? She asked with a half-smile. I poured the wine anyway. It's human, I said. That's got to count for something. We sat across from each other, the only light coming from the hallway night light shaped like a little glowing fox. I watched her trace her finger around the rim of the glass, nervous, hesitant. You're not just Claire's nanny, I said finally. Her eyes lifted to mine, uncertain. I know, she said quietly. But I don't know what else I'm allowed to be. That sentence lodged deep in my chest. It's strange how love doesn't crash through the door like a wave. Sometimes it drips slowly, one drop at a time, until you look around and realize you're submerged. I hadn't kissed her. I hadn't even touched her hand. But I was already drowning in what I felt. And that terrified me more than any corporate takeover ever could. Then the world started watching. It began with a lunch meeting. My assistant, some executives, and two wives of board members who liked to play social referee. The conversation turned from profit margins to parenting, and one of them, Eleanor, cocked her head and asked, "So, is it true you've taken on a rather hands-on nanny?" The word dripped with condescension. "She's incredible," I replied coolly. "My daughter adores her." "Yes, well, I'm sure she does," Eleanor said. "But it's important to maintain boundaries. For appearances." Appearances. That one word clawed at me. Like Marina was some inconvenient smudge on my pristine image. It got worse. Judith, one of our top investors, called me into a private meeting a few days later. "There's talk," she said, without pleasantries. "Rumors about impropriety. About unprofessional conduct with the help." The help. I clenched my jaw. "Judith," I said, keeping my tone civil. "She's not a story for the tabloids. She's the reason my daughter wakes up smiling. And that's worth more than any investor's comfort. People like things neat, Graham. Controlled. You know that." I did. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care. That night, I told Marina everything. Her face fell. She stood up from the kitchen stool like the ground had opened under her. "I should go," she said abruptly. "I've seen this movie before, Graham. It never ends well for women like me." "Women like you," I repeated. "Women without protection. Without names on mailboxes. Women who love too quietly and leave before they're pushed." Her voice cracked. "I can't lose Claire. Not after Amelie. Not again." And then I saw her. Not the composed, soft-voiced Marina who made bedtime magical, but the woman who had already lost a child, already carried unbearable grief, and was now being asked to quietly step aside again for someone else's comfort. "You're not going anywhere," I said. She didn't believe me, so I said it again. "You are not going anywhere." I walked over, gently placed my hand over hers. I let people make decisions for me after Vanessa died. I let them tell me what grief should look like, what a single father should be, how a CEO should act. But this, I gestured between us. "This is mine, and I'm not letting them touch it." She looked at me, not with gratitude, not with romance, but with trust. The kind that says, "I've been broken, but maybe you won't break me too." That night, she stayed. Not as an employee, not as a guest, but as someone who finally realized she was wanted. And maybe loved. The day after Marina nearly walked away, I woke up before sunrise. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sound of Claire's laughter coming from the kitchen and Marina's soft voice singing along to a children's song on the radio. A sound so domestic, so gentle, so right. And all I could think was, what the hell have I been waiting for? By 9 a.m., I was in my corner office, staring at the skyline like it held answers. I'd spent years chasing this view, fighting tooth and claw for every floor of that tower, every promotion, every buyout. But for the first time, it felt meaningless, empty. I opened a blank document and began to type. Not a resignation, but a redefinition. Effective immediately, I'm transitioning from CEO to executive chairman. Day-to-day operations will be handled by my COO. I'll remain as an advisor, with full confidence in the team I've built. Each sentence felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 10 years. I signed it, sent it, and just like that, the empire could run without me, and I could finally return to the life I wanted to live. That evening, I came home early. Marina was at the stove, stirring pasta sauce with Claire on a step stool beside her, wearing a tiny apron that said Mini Boss. I stood in the doorway and didn't say a word. I just watched. The way Marina leaned down to wipe sauce from Claire's cheek. The way Claire leaned into her without hesitation. It wasn't performance. It was belonging. I stepped into the room, and they both looked up. "Daddy," Claire squealed. Marina smiled, but there was hesitation behind it. "You're home early," she said, drying her hands on a towel. I nodded and knelt beside Claire. "Can I talk to Marina alone for a second, sweetheart?" Claire pouted dramatically, then skipped off toward her room to finish her drawing. I turned to Marina. "I made a decision today," I said. "Okay," she said slowly. "What kind of decision?" "The kind that changes everything." I reached into my coat pocket and handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it with trembling hands, scanned the top line, and looked up at me, stunned. You stepped down?" "Not fully," I said, "but I'm not needed there every day anymore. I've given them years. Now, I want to give you time." And Claire, her eyes filled with tears. Graham, I don't want you to sacrifice everything for me. I'm not, I said, stepping closer. I'm finally choosing the right things to fight for. The next few weeks passed like a dream, but not the perfect, polished kind. The real kind, where Claire threw a tantrum over broccoli and Marina forgot her phone at the park, and I burned breakfast trying to be spontaneous. But we were living, not just coexisting. No cameras, no board meetings, no hidden fears, just us. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled in the distance, Claire curled up in Marina's lap on the couch while I brought over hot chocolate for all three of us. Do you think Mommy would be mad? Claire asked suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. Marina looked startled, but I knew what she meant. Mad about what, sweetie? I asked, sitting beside them. That we're a new family now. That I love Marina too. My heart cracked open. I pulled her into my arms and said the truth. No, baby. Mommy would be proud. Because love doesn't run out. It grows. And Marina? She wiped a tear from her cheek and kissed Claire's forehead. I didn't replace anyone, sweetheart. I'm just someone lucky enough to love you too. Months passed. And one evening, as the sun set behind the city, I knelt in the living room with a small box in my hand. This isn't a grand gesture, I told Marina. It's not for show. It's not about tradition or timelines. It's just me, asking you to stay. Not as a nanny, not as a guest, but as family. She said yes. Through tears, through laughter, through every piece of herself she once believed was too broken to be wanted again. Clapperboard final voiceover lines. I installed cameras to protect my daughter, but it wasn't surveillance that kept us safe. It was the woman I almost overlooked, the one whose heart had already been shattered, yet still found a way to heal mine. Love didn't enter our lives with fireworks. It crept in through bedtime stories, spilled juice, and lullabies sung in the dark. And somewhere between the broken pieces, we built something whole, together.